Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
I come here from another board to tell you a story /x/ because it doesn't really fit other boards and it feels good to get it off my chest from time to time. It's not the kind of story I can tell at dinner parties my kids don't even know. Everyone looks at me like a gentle giant and would be shocked if I shared this with them. There are no demons or devils, apart from those that live in all of us in my story. No witches or spells, but to me there are the ghosts of the two men I killed. It's a long story, and will take a few posts, so get comfy. Here we go. It's been about 14 years. I graduated college the year before and just started a new job. The first job I ever had that gave paid vacation. I didn't have the money to go on a real vacation and my girlfriend was still in school, so I decided to go camping for a couple of days. When April rolled around, I had been planning and had all my gear ready. Tent, pack, sleeping bag, all with my full name written on them, and a .357 Colt revolver, because I was scared of bears. When the day came to leave, there was a chance of rain, but I said screw it. I'll read a book in the tent. I got an early start and hiked for about 6 hours, then found a nice spot uphill from the creek and set up camp. I got my camp axe and made a nice wood pile, then started a fire, in the daylight. Then I walked down to the creek and went fishing. It was great. I caught 2 fish in no time and started to throw them back. Then the sun started to go down and it started to rain, so I headed back to my camp. As I got close to my spot, I noticed movement at my tent. Then I saw a man leaning halfway into my tent. I think I hollered, "Get the hell out of my tent," or something. I started charging my 6'3", 250-pound ass up the hill towards him. Then another guy stepped out of my tent. I froze. I knew this was a bad situation. I was outnumbered, and there was no one around who could help me. They were both short little Mexicans. They seemed about as scared to see my big bearded ass I did to see them. We all stood still looking at each other for what seemed like a while. The one in the red shirt was the first one to move, and he immediately picked up my axe and they both started towards me. I started to back away, but they were closing in on me fast. It took me a second to remember the revolver laying loosely in my cargo pants pocket, and then it took forever to actually get it out. In the process, I managed to fall my clumsy ass down. When I finally got the gun up and pointed towards them, the guy in the red shirt was 15 feet away and holding the axe up. He flinched just before I pulled the trigger. The other guy was immediately behind him in a single file coming down the hill towards me. I fired 3 rounds while sitting on the ground. A .357 Magnum with hollow points does more damage than you think. When I stood up, they were both dead. The guy in front was shot in the stomach and neck. It almost took his head off. I think the other guy took one to the chest that over-penetrated. But maybe it was the 3rd round. 357 is hard to control. I considered myself a very good man. I would give any of you the shirt off of my back, and as I stood there with a smoking revolver in my hand, looking at the dead bodies of the 2 men I had just killed, I lost it. I started running in a full sprint back down the path to the ranger station. I don't know how much time passed before I was out of breath and collapsed. The sun was gone now. There was very little light left, and it was starting to rain hard. I was so freaked out that I didn't think to grab a flashlight, more ammo, or anything when I left. Now I was stuck on a trail in the dark with a half-empty revolver. I was losing my mind. Every raindrop was someone behind me. I went into flight mode again. For the next few hours I ran, slipped, fell, and crawled down the trail, knowing if I lost the trail no one would ever see me again. Finally, the rain stopped and I made it back to the ranger station. There was no one there, but they had an emergency call box outside. I don't remember what I told the lady on the phone, but she told me to stay at the station and wait for help. I fell asleep on the steps of the ranger station, clutching my gun for dear life. When I woke up, there were bright lights and people screaming at me. It took me a second to realize that they were cops, and asking me to drop my weapon, I did. It got blurry for me then. There were a lot of questions and other people kept showing up. They gave me some jogging pants because I had torn my pants all up. Then they wanted me to take them back down the trail to recover the bodies. It's bright now. I don't know what time it is. There are 3 sheriff's deputies with ARs, 2 search and rescue guys, a state trooper with an AR, and a ranger. They don't tell me much, but I gather the plan is to go back find the bodies, then the SR guys will have a helicopter take them back. I'm confused and concerned why they are all suiting up like we are going to war. We head back. I don't remember much of the walk back. I was kinda in a daze, but I snapped out of it when I saw my campsite. There is my pile of wood and an empty bag of my beef jerky that I didn't eat, that's it. No tent, no axe, no fishing poles or fish, and no dead bodies. I'm losing it. I sit down and start to sob. They look all around, nothing. One of them starts to talk to me because I think I've lost my mind at this point. And he explains it all to me. Mexican cartels have started using migrant workers to make illegal pot farms in the state parks. He said I was dumb to build a fire in the daylight, and that some growers had seen my smoke near their grow site. After I shot the 2, some others probably drugged the bodies to the river and took all my stuff. I was right to run the hell out of there, and it probably saved my life. We walked back. They helped me along the way. They took me to the sheriff's department and let me lay down for a while, then more questions. I don't remember them. They took me back to my car, kept my gun, and I drove home. My live-in girlfriend left. We both realized my name was on all of my gear. I stayed for a few more days, then got too paranoid to stay, so I went back across the country to my family's house for a while. I got 2 phone calls from the detective. He said they would keep the gun until the case was closed for forensics. Never got the gun back. Haven't been camping since. I can still see their faces clearly. It's almost as if I can see myself standing over their dead bodies holding that gun. I've wondered for years who they were, how they got there. Did they have children or a wife? Is someone missing them? I have almost made peace with it, but not quite. Sometimes I feel they are with me now, but they seem to see my side of the story. They don't seem angry. We are all upset by what happened. I don't know if ghosts are real, but the dead can definitely haunt you.
Post police report.
Haha, I don't ever remember seeing a police report, and if I did have one, I lost it years ago. Honestly, the cops didn't seem to give a shit. My dad has wanted me to go back for the gun, which he gave me, but screw that. I live in Florida now, and I'll be damned if I'll go back to California to recount the time I killed 2 men just to get a gun back. I've come to call them Juan and Pablo, because I never knew their names. It's sick to say, but taking a life is very intimate, like losing your virginity. You remember it, I never knew them, but they are a part of my subconscious now. I honestly feel like they are lost relatives or something. I think back upon them like I do my dead grandmother. That's the paranormal part to me, but maybe it's all in my head. Dreams, over a decade now, and Juan and Pablo still visit me most nights. I'm getting more drunk now, the thoughts that fill my head. What if Pablo had sons, like I do now? My name is Paul, he had the red shirt. What if Pablo Jr. is out there and knows my name from my gear? What if he shows up one day and has his vengeance?
And this is exactly why soldiers come back with PTSD, because we aren't made to kill each other. We can physically, yes, but mentally it can destroy us. I can't imagine what you have gone through, OP. Sorry that you had to make that decision. But it sounds like you had no choice. They were going to kill you. You only did what you had to do to survive. Release it. Let go of it. Let them go and forgive yourself, brother. You still have a life to live, and that is no mistake.
I do well now and have a nice family. I don't hold regrets about my actions. In fact, they make me feel safe knowing how I would react in a life or death situation. Maybe I have created some false reality where Pablo and Juan are my friends now, and they understand why I did what I did, just to make myself feel better. Ghost, memories, they are both haunting.
And this is exactly why soldiers come back with PTSD. Because we aren't made to kill each other. We can physically, yes, but mentally, it can destroy us. I can't imagine what you have gone through, OP. Sorry that you had to make that decision, but it sounds like you had no choice. They were going to kill you. You only did what you had to do to survive. Release it. Let go of it. Let them go, and forgive yourself, brother. You still have a life to live, and that is no mistake.
You're someone who knows jack shit about PTSD and evolutionary history. We've been killing each other since even before we came down from trees. Some even evolved not to feel any remorse from hurting others. What we didn't evolve for, though, and what mostly causes PTSD, for example, is stuff like artillery rounds hitting 20 feet away from you, blowing your friend into pieces and rendering you deaf.
Yeah, I've got a friend that served in the 75th Rangers. You can tell he has seen shit, and if you have killed, you can almost sense others who have. I have no idea what he went through. I can only assume he felt for months the fear that I felt for a night. I thought I was way too meek to go fight, but you never know what you are capable of until you have no choice.
Why didn't you post this to /k/?
Why/k/? I spoke briefly about it on an immigrant thread on another board, and someone else said I should put it on /k/. I've never spoken much about it IRL. My wife, who was my lived-in girlfriend at the time, my parents and her parents are the only people that know, and it's understood that I should not bring it up with any of them. My wife left because she was scared of retaliation after. When I say anything, she says I need therapy. 4chan is the best therapy.
Good read. I can totally see how killing people gets normies fucked up in the head. Even when you have killed a lot of people already, it still haunts you, taking a life. But instead of freaking out on the spot like you did, we just can't sleep well at night. But it seems you have a family to take care of you anon, so you are not getting the real short end of the stick.
Oddly, I think that Pablo and Juan's ghost also feel like my life was better and worth more than theirs. But I also know that Pablo's ghost is just bullshit, and an arbitrary name that I invented just to make myself feel better about it all. Or is Juan and Pablo here with me now? I've gone through a bottle of tequila telling this story. Ghost, spirits, I don't know. I also lost a son along this timeline. Life is fleeting. Ghosts are real even if we create them. Our mistakes and costly battles are real and will follow us until we die. Pablo flinched just before I shot him. What if I hadn't been so scared? What if I had yelled in an authoritarian voice to get back before my scared hand pulled the trigger? Would Pablo and Juan stop? He seemed scared when he saw my gun, but I was so scared it was already over. What if I had been more cool and collected, not falling down, retreating scared? Could I have made it out of there without any of us dying? Doesn't matter now.
I got one from maybe 7 years back. 16-year-old me and my parents are headed out to meet our cousins to help them set up their music festival. Venues are a little different this year. Instead of a desert, it's some campground or something up in the California woods, can't remember where. Really high elevation, like almost 4,000 feet above sea level. It took a long time to get there because a bunch of roads were closed for one reason or another. Finally pull up to the place after going through a dense part of the woods on a dirt road. Meet with our cousins and the property owner. Start setting up all the stages and dance areas. Fast forward the next day, I'm wandering around as artists are practicing their sets and doing sound testing. I don't much care for psychedelic dance music, so I'm trying to find something to occupy some time. Find some abandoned tents and tarps from another event that happened recently. A paper plate note left behind for someone. Mentioned something about not knowing where they went, but that they were headed home now, and didn't want to leave them wondering where their friends went. Weird, but whatever. Sometimes people get left behind at these things. Start wandering around some of the off-road trails near the property owner's place. Tons of abandoned vehicles, old construction trucks and whatnot from the 60s and 70s. Very neat. Always liked doing urbex. Kept following the trails, which eventually turned into off-roading trails like for four-wheelers and stuff. Notice a lot of RVS rotting in the woods too. Some were locked, some weren't. Broke into a few and they all still had things inside. Clothes, rags, kitchenware, random garbage mostly. Bit gross inside them, smells moldy too. Continue on the trail and start coming across remains of old wooden shacks. Shit tons of rusty cans around, big ones too. Real old chassis from I think the 40s, 50s. There's at least 10 more ruins like that along the road. I figured I've seen enough for today and headed back to the festival. The next day I head off to the opposite side of the campground. I walk along the dirt bike trail again, not as many buildings on this side, mostly just more thickets and brush. Come across a little footpath going deeper into the forest. Footpaths only show up in these areas because it leads to something important enough to visit more than once. Decide to follow it for a bit, 15-minute walk or so. It was hot today and there were a bunch of mosquitoes there for some reason. The footpath leads to another shack, mostly just a big pile of rotted planks at this point. Lots of big cans piled up here too. Even found a single loose boot. And another rusted out car chassis too. Same 50s era. Very tucked away area, hard to imagine someone driving their car there. Hang around for a bit, sitting on top of the car, poking around the cans for any artifacts. I'm a stalker friend. It starts getting dark despite it being 2 p.m. in the summer. It gets really quiet. My ears start ringing like I have tinnitus or something. Started feeling sick to my stomach. It starts to smell kinda bad too. Really starts to feel like I'm being watched. For whatever reason, I'm stuck staring at this particular spot in the woods. I think I should leave. Turn around and nope the hell out of there. The whole time I'm looking behind me and can't shake the feeling I'm being chased. Still dead silent. Only thing I can hear are my shoes crunching twigs and leaves reverberating in my ears as I'm scrambling back up this path. Make it back to the four-wheeler trail. Didn't stop there and kept going to the edge of the campground. It gets brighter and I start to feel better. Everything sounds normal again. I go back to our RV and just chill for the rest of the festival. Stayed away from that half of the forest for the rest of my stay. Not sure if it was real or in my head. I still think about it sometimes.
Okay, I've only told this once before. It's not that exciting, but still, it's a family mystery. Be me, 8 years old or so, camping with family. Not just my immediate family, uncles, aunts, cousins and my grandparents. We're out in the Australian bush. It's super dark, but there is a big fire with all our tents and cars close by. Partying and getting drunk and stuff, and having a classic good Aussie time. Suddenly, I hear a massive noise. Is that kind of growl cats make when they're fighting, but deep and monstrous. Uncles go WTF in unison. Sound is coming from the cars. Everyone is really quiet as we listen to this guttural growling. Uncle shines a light over near the car, sees nothing, shines it a little more. There's a giant shadowy black mass right next to one of the cars, about the same size. If a little smaller than a FWD, I'd say about 2 or so meters. One of my uncles flips out, starts yelling and screaming at the creature. Black mass goes slinking away. After a while we go back to chilling and playing music and stuff. Normal Aussie reaction. Leave the next day, but it's all we talk about. Every single person on one side of my family can corroborate this story. We still bring it up all the time. It was almost 2 decades ago now.
I have a few. Be 9 years old. Summertime. Be outside in the backyard. See my grandfather through one of the bedroom's windows. He is standing there looking at me. Confused because grandfather lives very far from us. We only see him once a year at Christmas. Run inside. Mom's washing dishes. I ask, where's Grandpa? Long story short, it's just me and Mom in the house, nobody else. Later that day, we find out Grandpa passed away. Mom later said it spooked her that I must have seen her dad's ghost in the house, but she figured he must have been checking on us before he crossed over. Another, be around 13 years old, helping Dad move some stuff into the attic. We have a drop-down ladder. I'm at the bottom passing things up to Dad. He goes, "What the hell?" A long pause. Scrambling, Dad rushes down the stairs, pops the drop-down ladder up, closing the attic. "What happened, Dad?" Nothing. Years later, he told me he saw something. A thick shadow, solid black. Stopped to watch it as it moved along the far wall and noticed he heard footsteps like dress shoes wherever the shadow moved. Noped out of there. Craziest part was that when I was younger, I used to hear thumping sounds in the attic that used to wake me up at night, but my parents claimed never to hear it.
Okay, citizens of /X/, maybe you can help me out with identifying something I saw last year. Be me, 27, driving a box truck for work. 5 a.m., get out on the road and cruise through the dark. 20 minutes pass and I'm just rolling at 75 miles per hour. See a gray mass on the side of the road. It looks like a big dead animal. Oh, someone hit a dog.jpg. Drive closer, see it's not a dog. Big mass of light gray fur with what looked like a black or dark gray undercoat. 4 legs, each ends with what looks like a giant raccoon paw, with 4 fingers and a thumb with black claws. Torso ends in rounded bump. Either it didn't have a head or it was bent back behind it. Long, hairless tail, about as long as the body and all black tail, belly, legs, and feet. Paws were black. Everything else was the light gray color. Thing takes up the entire shoulder of the highway, pic-related, is my amateur sketch of creature and paw. See all this in a span of 3 or 4 seconds max, still flying by at 75. After I pass it, WTF to myself for a couple minutes thinking about what it could have been. Decide I'll get a better look when I come back this way in the afternoon. Afternoon comes, not there, someone must have moved it or something. What do you think I saw /X/? I've never heard of giant opossums before, but my mom has seen a giant boar before. I live in Central Texas, so opossums aren't rare here, but I've never seen one even get anywhere near that big.
Everything you said sounds exactly like a possum until the thing takes up entire shoulder of highway. The only theory I have is that you may have seen a roadkill of a bear, and the tail that you saw was just a snake around it. Regarding the gray fur, if the bear pelt is extra oily, it could reflect back your headlight as you then perceive it as a silvery hair. I'm pretty sure snakes in Texas cannot eat a whole bear, so most likely highway authorities removed the carcass in the morning or when they noticed it too. If you still have the drawing, can you draw a traffic cone next to it for height reference? I'll see if I can make another drawing after work if I can't find the original sketch.
I'll see if I can make another drawing after work if I can't find the original sketch. Nah, the hair on this was matte and fluffy, not slick and shiny. Think of how a wolf's fur is. It looked like that kind of. There were little splotches or bits that were gray, almost like the strands were darker toward the skin and got lighter towards the tips of the hair. Also, there aren't any gray bears that I know of, and if the tail were a snake, it would have to have been the longest and biggest solid black snake I've ever seen in my life. Went ahead and made another sketch. We have orange cones around the warehouse that come up to my waist or a little higher, so sketch related. There was a metal guardrail about 30 to 40 feet past it on the road, but I'm not 100% sure if I'd be able to scale it to that exactly.
I grew up in the small town of Marietta, Pennsylvania. It's a quiet little town, although not so much anymore, but always felt a little bit off. However, growing up there was always this nice house that sat atop the hill of a field where the neighborhood kids and I always used to play football. Once I grew older and turned 21, it was beside a road I used to walk up to get alcohol at the local pizzeria, Marco's. The house was never something I didn't pay attention to. I've seen the residents outside. There was an older blue Mustang I presume the father of the household was working on all the time during the summer. They seemed pretty happy. He had a wife and 2 small kids I saw sometimes. The night before things got weird, I was walking up to get some alcohol and stop in for a few drinks when I vividly remember giving the man a casual nod hello as I walked on up. I don't remember what he was doing, but I do remember he was reaching into his car for something as we made eye contact and nodded. I walked by on my way back home and everything was dark there. A blue Mustang in the back driveway and their other vehicle, a white generic van, was there as well. Nothing was out of the ordinary. I walked back down to my house, cracked open my beer in the garage out back, and had a good night listening to the radio and hanging out. The house wasn't in visual sight, but the road was, and I wouldn't notice anything out of the ordinary. I woke up the next day around the early afternoon. I had a typical hangover, and admittedly I was an alcoholic at the time, so my hangover cure was, well, more booze. I got showered and changed and left my house on that midsummer day on my usual route to Marco's. I put my earbuds in and didn't even pay attention to whether or not a house I always expected to be there existed anymore. I got to Marco's and sat and had a few Jack and Cokes and talked with the regulars like I always did for a few hours. On my way back with my booze to end the night, I didn't have my headphones in and was feeling a good buzz. I walked down the road by the house like normal until I gazed upon the corner and saw nothing. I was quite perplexed, as one would be in this situation, but what made it worse was the warehouse medical lab for GlaxoSmithKline. The workers weren't allowed to smoke on the lot, as I already knew from asking long before, so a few of them were standing at the edge of the road there right next to where the house always was. I looked at them confused, and they gave me confused stares back as I asked, "Wasn't there a house here?" They looked back at me and shrugged, trying to figure out what house I was talking about. There wasn't a patch of dirt where a recently dismantled house might be. It was completely covered in grass. The spot where the foundation was just natural with the rest of the hill like nothing was ever there. Even the 10-foot or so makeshift driveway, where their cars parked that was made up of dirt and stones, was just a natural patch of grass. The next day I had my mother drive by there with me, and even she couldn't figure out what house I was talking about. Nobody could remember the house being there but me. Unfortunately, I can't find any of the kids I used to play sports with in that field to ask them if they remember. I admit that would be a little weird anyway, so I want to see if there's any way I can prove something weird happened or disprove myself, because there is a thing our brains do that changes memories and what we see to make more sense. My only problem is I can still remember the feeling that night of knowing it was there the day before.
I've been experiencing something somewhat strange recently. Nothing too extreme, but my nerves are being pushed. So I live in the Carolinas, and deer are extremely common here. I'll see at least a small group of them every day. I hit a deer and killed it with my car about a year back while driving home from my ex's house, which was actually the last night I saw her. I was too scared to go back and see the damage I caused to the deer, but I was certain I killed it. I felt guilty for leaving the body behind, almost like I was disrespecting it and anybody who would come across it next. Since then, I've been extremely paranoid about driving around in heavily wooded areas, which sucks since I live in one. About a month back, I've noticed something very strange about the behavior of deer in my immediate area. My car doesn't spook them like other cars do. I work a night shift and usually drive home late at night alone on the road, and whenever I pass deer or groups of them, they act as if I'm not even there. On top of the strange ignorance to me, I've also been seeing a lot more roadkill. Roadkill here is unfortunately pretty common, but never have I seen so many dead deer in such a short amount of time. First one I saw was the stiff corpse of a deer on its side. It was in the grass, and it was a good week before somebody took it away. Next, I kept seeing fawns on the highway. I didn't keep track of them, but I was pretty disgusted. Then a few days later, I saw an adult deer in the middle of the road, gored to absolute hell. No way on earth could a single car do such things to an animal. I usually am not bothered by gore too heavily, but never have I seen roadkill in pieces, vaporized into the road. It was removed the next morning. Something about seeing all of these killings and having blood on my hands really brings up my paranoia about seeing them everywhere surrounding my home. I've never had something unease me so much.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.